Joining us from South London is Labour's Shadow Business Secretary Chuka Umunna. If Labour is so against zero-hours contracts, why did 62 Labour MPs employ people on zero-hours contracts? Are they hypocrites?
Well, they don't, and that's wrong. Actually, everybody knows there are three different types of contract: fixed, casual. Fixed, casual and temporary, I think the independent parliamentary authority puts people on, but my colleagues do not have people on these kind of contractual arrangements. That's just wrong. But look, the point is, Christian, we've got to do something about this. You've got 1.8 million people on these zero-hours contracts.
Because you're very against zero-hours contracts.
I have to say, sorry, Christian, I can't hear you.
Yeah, well, that's because you're talking while I'm talking. If you stop talking, we'll be okay. Last year, IPSA announced that 62 Labour MPs were employing people on zero-hours contracts, along with lots of other MPs as well. Isn't that hypocrisy?
But they're not, Christian, and they're not. I'll just be absolutely clear about this. The number that you've cited is wrong. When people are, for example, covering people on maternity leave, they are put down as being a temporary worker, or I think casual worker, but they are not on a zero-hour contract. It's wrong what you're saying.
Right, what are you going to do then for all these zero-hours contracts workers? How long will they have to work on their zero-hours contracts before they get proper contracts?
Well, at the moment, you have a situation where you can turn up for your shift and it will be cancelled at late notice and there'll be no compensation, in spite of the fact that your travel you would have had to pay for. So we will ensure that people get compensation if their shifts are cancelled at late notice. That isn't the case at the moment. And we've also got a situation where there are a lot of people on these contracts who in practice have been working a regular pattern of hours of work on a regular basis, but don't have a contract that reflects that. So if you've been working a regular pattern of hours for 12 weeks, then you will have the right to a contract after that period that reflects that.
Okay.
By the way, I was very pleased to see at the top of the package Brompton Bicycles.
Yeah,
because
all right.
Part of the problem with the labour market is that there aren't enough companies like them. They have everybody on at least the living wage there, and also they have a policy of not putting people on zero-hours contracts.
Sorry,
Chris, just to say, I was talking over you. I could hear your producer talking to me in the ear.
Oh, right.
Okay?
Well, I'm sorry about that. I hope that's gone. The trouble is, Tony Blair promised to get rid of zero-hours contracts under a Labour government in 1997, and you didn't do it for 13 years. So why should anyone believe you now?
Well, actually, at that point, zero-hours contracts were a very niche thing in the labour market.
So you don't need to keep your promise?
There were not really many of them in operation at all. No, if you actually let me finish the sentence, whereas what has happened is that actually they become a regular feature and a norm in certain sectors, and that's why we've needed to have action. And we didn't have a situation, I mean, when we left office, I mean, there was some discussion around what a zero-hour contract was, but there were around 120,000, I think, in operation then. We've got 1.8 million now, according to the Office for National Statistics. And the question is, do you do something about that? Now, the things I've just told you that we're going to do, the government's not going to do. And you've had the Work and Pension Secretary today saying, actually, this isn't a problem. We should call them flexible hours contracts.
Let's move on to unemployment.
Anything about exploitation if you refuse to accept that it's actually going on.
Let's move on to the employment figures. Do the Conservatives and Lib Dems deserve any credit for the falling unemployment figures?
Well, ultimately, the people who create jobs in our country are our businesses, and I think, full credit to them in very difficult economic conditions. They've continued to plough on and have managed to create lots of jobs.
So
but of
no
course,
credit to them.
Any fall in unemployment is welcome. Any fall in unemployment is welcome.
Yeah. Did the government have anything to do with it?
You've got to remember the nature of our jobs market. We've got almost half of our people in the country who are living in poverty who are actually people in work. So the nature of people's work is very important.
Did the government have anything to do with it?
The people I would credit with creating jobs are businesses. They are the ones who create jobs. And actually, I would say this has happened in many respects in spite of them, in spite of the government.
Can I take you to something that happened today on Ed Miliband's tour, where a journalist asked a pertinent, if inelegantly phrased, question? Here's what he said.
Hello, Ben Bryant from Vice News.
From where?
Vice News.
Oh, right. What does Vice News do?
We make films, we write stories. So one of the criticisms of this election campaign has been of how tightly controlled it is.
Yeah.
I mean, you yourself have only done one real walkabout with voters so far. Don't you think that all of this stage management bullshit is particularly alienating for young people?
I don't think you count as stage managed, do you, Ben?
We snuck in.
A lot of people have said how stage managed this campaign has been, that the leaders aren't meeting real people, they're not getting out there on the streets. You meet hand-picked activists at well-orchestrated campaigns against pretty podiums with nice colours. And that's what's turning people off. Do you have any sympathy with that view?
Well, I have to say that the election campaign isn't only what you see in front of the cameras. I mean, I've just hot-footed it, and I'm not allowed to mention where I am actually, but I've just been doing a Q&A with the Somali part of the Somali community here in London and talking to them about the general election and what Labour's offer is, and I can promise you that was in no way staged managed. And in some respects, look, I'm standing here in somebody's garden. I couldn't quite hear you earlier. Some might say this interview hasn't been particularly staged managed. So there are parts of a campaign which of course need discipline and rigour, so all the different parties can get their messages across. But there's a hell of a lot that doesn't happen in front of the cameras, which is a really important part of the campaign. So it isn't just what people see, no disrespect to you, but on Channel 4 News and Sky News, there's a hell of a lot of other things happening around the campaign too. And that's all part of our wonderful democracy, I suppose.
Chuka Umunna, thank you very much.